morning, everyone. Welcome to all the dignitaries and participants. I, CA Bhavi Thakkar, on behalf of Professional Skills Enrichment Committee, ICAI, welcome you all the participants in today's webcast from presence to persuasion, public speaking skills that command attention and trust. This is a very important topic for today's world because the public speaking skills have got a huge attention, and this is one of the important platforms to interact with everyone in today's modern world. So today we have a very important resource person with us, Bhavna Kumari ji, who is present here, and she is a innovative learning and a development leader with a 25 plus years of progressive learning in crafting high impact learning ecosystems, designing leadership programs, and conducting immersive training interventions. Certified in NLP, in instructional design, neuroscience of learning, and psychology, with extensive facilitation experience for ICAI, corporates, and academic institutions. A published author and a passionate mentor committed to cultivate inclusive, high performing learning environments. Authored the book Aim High, Unleash the Potential of Effective Learning, published on Amazon, focuses on scientific and psychological techniques for learning transformation. We have very important mentor today who can help us with a very important topic on public speaking skills that command attention and trust. I welcome you, ma'am, on today's webcast. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Bhaviji, for the wonderful introduction which you gave, and definitely the introduction on the session as well. So, I also welcome all of you to this wonderful session. I'm sure you'll find this really useful. And once again, a very warm welcome to the session where we are going to explore the new possibilities, where it tells you that how presence can build credibility and how credibility leads to persuasion. So, without wasting any time, let me share my screen and let's deep dive into the session. I hope my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Thank you. So here the session is, as Bhavi ma'am also mentioned, from presence to persuasion, where we are covering a lot of things, what is actually persuasion and how presence leads to credibility and how credibility further leads to persuasion. So before we deep dive into the details of the session, let me quickly ask you a question. And this question is, when you hear the phrase from presence to persuasion, what does it suggest you in a professional context? So how can you answer this question? You can either scan the QR code or you can log into slido.com and enter the code hash 3298594. I repeat, either you can scan the QR code or you can directly go to slido.com. Just type in this in your browser and enter the code hash 3298594, and you can share whatever word is coming to you. It could be anything. For example, it could be credibility or influence or communication. I mean, it depends on you. What is coming to your mind, just write, just type in, and I would be able to see this here on the screen. I can't see your name, I can only see your response. Feel free to share your thought. Let's make this a more engaging session. So I repeat, the question is, and there is no right or wrong answer. Whatever is coming to your mind, just type in. So let me repeat the question. The question is, when you hear the phrase from presence to persuasion, what does it suggest you in a professional context? Let me see how many of you have already entered. Okay, trust is one. Thank you so much for response. Some more responses. Let it come in, please. So whenever you hear this word, there's a word called as presence. Okay, influence is another. So when you hear, what is the first thing which is coming to your mind in a professional context? Some more responses quickly, please. I know many of you are here who is attending this webcast. Some more words coming. I can see that most of you are typing. So okay, this is not okay, not the code. This is the code. But somebody's mentioned the code. Code, you just need to type in the slido.com. There's a bar which says that enter the code to reply. And motivate is another response. Yes. Value. Can you get some more responses? Quickly, please. Can you see some more response? And all the responses are correct here. Let me tell you. Making an impact, future prospects, trust, value. Thank you so much. Thank you all. And going forward, also confidence. Influence, wow, superb. How do we move from persuade the stakeholders towards your goals? Superb, future prospects. So I can see you actively participating, and that actually motivates us and keeps you engaged, and you can retain the information from the webcast in a more effective manner. So I would request all of you to participate, actively engage, be active learner, not don't be a passive learner. That's my request. And take a note of all the important things which you think will definitely help you in real life. So many things we can see here. Domination. Okay, there is one. Success, follow-up, insightful. Superb. Thank you. Thank you so much for your responses. Thank you. And with this, I am moving to the a real world scenario context. And this is one of the real world scenario wherein, and this is something which is related to our real life. There's one of the example also, you can say, or real life experience. uh, Suppose, or you can imagine that you're presenting a report to the client or to the board, and you have given a very clear explanation of all the risk which is involved. You were very confident in answering all the questions. But when the meeting was over, at the end of the meeting, you get to hear, thank you so much, we'll think about it and we'll come back to you. And they never come back to you actually in real sense. The meeting stops there. So, what do you think? What would have gone wrong or right, or what would have been the case in this case? I'm sure you're thinking. Just think about it. It's a real scenario we are referring to. And the real scenario is that we are presenting a report, as I said, just explaining all the risk. You're answering all the questions, but at the end, you get to hear, thank you so much for the wonderful explanation which you give. We'll definitely think about it. And the client or the stakeholder, they're not coming back to you. So, do you think this sentence is a rejection? I would say no. This sentence is not a rejection. It's actually a signal that persuasion has not happened yet. I repeat, this is a signal that persuasion has not happened yet. So, in today's session, we are going to talk about this gap. What is the gap? The gap between explaining something in detail, explaining something correctly, and influencing decisions of stakeholders. Right? So these are two different things. One is the point where we're explaining the situation, we're explaining the risk, and we are doing this in great detail. And another is we are influencing the decisions of stakeholders. But then we see there is a gap, and the gap is a signal that the persuasion has not happened yet, right? And we all have lived this moment. This it is not a theory, this is a pure lived experience I'm sharing with all of you, right? And let me share another uncomfortable truth which happens with most of us. Most decisions are not delayed because the numbers are wrong. Most decisions are not delayed because we are not good in terms of reporting. They are delayed because we were not influential enough to influence our stakeholders so that they can act on, right? They are delayed because the numbers were explained, I would say, but not influential enough to act on, right? So, as a chartered accountant, we are trained to be accurate. We are trained to be giving all the explanations. We are number crunchers. In today's scenario, accuracy is assumed, but what differentiates us from others is influence. So I repeat, and you can take a note, in today's world, accuracy is assumed, but influence is something what differentiates. What differentiates us from others. So it is not only about explaining the number, but then influencing our stakeholders so that they can act on those numbers, right? So which means also that deriving meaningful insights which are actionable for our stakeholders, right? So being accurate is not enough. So accuracy is something which can allow us, which can take us, I would say, is like an entry ticket for a chartered accountant, right? Being being a number cruncher, being very good with number is the entry ticket for a chartered accountant, but then influence is something which multiplies our value. I repeat, accuracy is the entry ticket for a chartered accountant, but then influence is the value multiplier, right? I hope you're taking note of the important points which we are sharing here. And here I put this on the slide also, that when we are correct, when we are very good with our numbers, when we can explain all the risk involved or anything else which is attached with the numbers, this allows us, this gives us opportunity to interact with the stakeholders to get more business for our firm or for our organization. But then influence is the differentiator. Influence is the value multiplier. Is something which differentiates you from uh, rest of the chartered accountants, I would say, because your qualification gives you authority. Your qualification gives you authority, but then authority alone will not guarantee you that whatever numbers, decisions you are giving will be accepted by the stakeholder. They will only accept your decisions if they have this uh, clarity that you are someone whom they can trust. You are someone who has high creditworthiness. So acceptance comes from how clearly, how coolly, and how convincing you are sharing your insights, which can be acted upon by the stakeholder. Right? How can you guide your stakeholders so that they can take right decisions? So the story does not end at the place where you're only explaining the numbers. Yes, the story begins there and the story ends where you are able to influence, you are able to persuade your stakeholders so that they can take decisions, so that they can act on those decisions which you have shared. And it depends on a lot of factors. We will see each and every factor what goes into from moving from presence to persuasion. I hope I'm making sense. Another question for you. Again, please scan the QR code and go to slido.com and you can enter hash 3298594. And I want to hear from you. In your experience, what do you think? What blocks decisions more often? This is in the professionals context we are referring to. So I repeat, in your experience, what do you think out of all these four pointers which we have entered here, which of this, or it can be one or it can be more than one, which of these things it blocks the decisions of the stakeholders more often? Is it lack of data? Please go and enter a response. You just need to tick whatever you think is the right option. It could be one, it can be more than one. So do you think this lack of data? Do you think this lack of clarity? Or you think this lack of confidence in terms of recommendations? Or there is resistance to change from the client side, from the stakeholder side, where if we are talking about both internal clients and external clients here. So I want to see some responses here. Please feel free to share your response. No response is right or wrong, as I said. Just keep it more engaging and more interactive so that you can retain the key learnings from the session. Let me go to the answer. Let me see. Okay, 73% of you mentioned lack of confidence in recommendations. So true. Lack of clarity. So true. Resistance to change also. Okay. Lack of data as well. Okay. Good. I can see it is increasing lack of clarity. Good. So lack of confidence definitely is number one, as we can see here in recommendations. lack of clarity also, and lack of data also to some extent. Okay, we'll see. We will in the upcoming parts of the session. We will see which one is the right answer. Lack of data is not so right because we are flooded with data in today's world, I would say. Okay. So thank you so much for the responses. Thank you for your active participation. And let's move on to the subtopic of the session. And before that, what all we are going to learn here, let's have a quick look so that by the end of the webcast, you will be able to learn how will you influence decision. And it is not only about delivering information. We should present the information in such a way that we should be able to influence the decisions of the decision maker. This is what we are going to learn, some of the techniques, what are the components, what goes into that. We will be able to learn how can we persuade someone ethically and professionally, how can we frame insights and recommendations, and how can we craft compelling stories and examples which persuades our stakeholders to take decisions, and how can we handle the resistance and question and answer effectively. So these are some of the objectives which we are trying to achieve through this webcast. Okay, I would request all of you to take note of the important points, whatever we are discussing, which you think is important for you in your professional life. Kindly take a note, and as I said, be active learner. Okay, so now I'm showing you some of the pictures here, and you can see one of the image, it is showing that someone is presenting the audit findings. In another, there is a politician, and the politician is asking for or communicating with people so that people can vote for them, right? Now, some more images I'll show you here. And this is somehow my, okay, yeah, that's coming. Uh, there is one person who is suggesting the customer that see my product, how my product is better than my competitor's product. What are the benefits which you can get? There's another image where addressing people to wearing masks. This is a situation we are referring to. Another is convincing a client during tax planning. And one more, the situation it shows that somebody is trying to handle the question and answer in a very confident manner. So, what is happening in all these cases if you want to reflect on this? In all these cases, I can give you some examples from personal life also. When you are trying to influence someone, someone could be your kid, could be your peer group, could be your spouse, and you want to influence them to do something which you want them to do. So in these scenarios, what are you doing actually? I'm sure you have this answer in your mind, and you are what you're doing is you are communicating, and communicating in a way where you are trying to influence others, where we are trying to persuade others. So in all these situations, if you reflect, we'll see persuasion is happening at the core. When a politician is communicating, what the politician is doing, politician is trying to persuade, is trying to influence others so that people will vote for the politician. If you are selling some product, and we all are born salesperson, we all know that, right? If we are presenting the audit finding, that way also we are selling some ideas to our client. If you're convincing a client during tax planning, there also you are persuading. So in a way, you in all these situations, one thing which is very clear, what is happening is persuasion. We'll see what is persuasion all about in the coming part of the session. Before that, let me have a quick look on what is communication. We all know this, right? I'm assuming you know this, but still I'll tell you in plain, simple words, communication is exchange of ideas, thoughts between one to one or between one to many. Right? There are two different kinds of communication we all know. There's verbal communication, communication happening through words. Non-verbal communication, communication which is happening through body language, facial expression, your hand movement, email writing, all these comes under non-verbal communication. There are many reasons we communicate, right? We all know we communicate because we want to get our things done. We communicate because we want to express our feelings. These are some of the reasons I've put in here. For example, we want to understand someone's needs. We want to communicate some idea, which is like informing some anything we want to inform to our stakeholders or to anyone of to express our feelings. If we want to engage with others, we communicate. Communicate is something we do during our sleep also. Why? Why I say so? We are communicating with ourselves. Probably we're communicating with our subconscious mind during our sleep. So one thing which we do entire day, night is communication. We all know, and for different purpose. And one reason, and which is a very important reason we communicate, is persuade. Because we want other to get persuaded by us. So we want to persuade others, we want to influence others. That is one of the very important reasons that we communicate, right? Now, just take a moment and think, what is persuasion actually? Is it manipulation? Is it sales? Or something else is coming to your mind? Think about it. Just give yourself few moments to think what is persuasion, and then I'll show you a simple definition of persuasion. What is persuasion? Persuasion is actually the ability to personally affect the actions. If you want to affect the actions of others, if you want to affect the decisions of others, if you want someone to change his or her opinion or thinking of something, you're trying to influence. So what you're doing actually, you're persuading others. So persuasion is actually it induces the change in the thought process of others. It induces change in the belief of others. And it allows you to get your things done. It allows you to achieve your desired outcome. Do you think it's powerful or not? In today's world, it's one of the very powerful tool where if you want something to get done, if you really want to be successful, persuasion is the tool which we all should have. However, in an ethical way, not in an unethical way. We'll talk about this as well in the upcoming part of the webcast. I hope I'm making sense. If there is anything which you want me to further include or add, you can share your input to the moderator and it will come to me. So let's go to the subtopic. The topic subtopic of the webcast is one of the topic which we're covering is the shift from explaining numbers to influencing decisions. Excuse me. So how, as of now, we have restricted ourselves to explaining numbers. And how can we make a transition from explaining numbers to influencing decisions of stakeholders? We'll talk about this and this topic. And I'll start with one of the example here. Example you can see here, this is a scenario of a management review where there is a finance professional, right, qualified as chartered accountant, for example, I'm saying, and this person is able to explain the numbers very clearly. And this person says there is a 9.4% drop in operating margin due to increased overheads. The reason is there. This seems to be very accurate, correct. This seems to be very complete. However, you see that once the explanation is done, there is no decision which is coming to the picture. So you don't see any momentum, no decision happening, right? And this is what we do mostly. We are telling that what is happening and why it is happening also. Now, what could be the other way which can impact our stakeholders to take decisions? Let me show you another scenario. Same data presented in a more influential way. And what is that? It shows the 9.4% margin drop is driven by fixed overheads that are no longer aligned with current volumes. If left unaddressed, this will erode profitability further in the next 2 quarters. I recommend revisiting cost structures now rather than reacting later. See the line which has been added here. If left unaddressed, I repeat, this will erode profitability further in the next 2 quarters. I recommend revisiting cost structures now rather than reacting later. So do you think this will influence the stakeholder? Definitely it will, because it is action oriented. It tells you I recommend. You are giving your recommendation also. You are telling that if you don't do this, what is going to happen? So this is also accurate. This is complete, and this more action oriented. That's the reason this is something which is going to influence the decision of stakeholder. Am I making sense? I hope that you're finding this useful, and we will see what is that thing that the second statement is, or what is that thing which is making the second statement more influential to the stakeholders. So what are that thing? What is explaining numbers, and how can we move from explaining numbers to influencing decisions? Because this is something which we all want to do. This is something which is part and parcel of our profession, right? So why do you think explaining number is no longer enough? Explaining number, we all know it is no longer enough. That is very clear from the example itself. And let me ask you a direct question also, and you can think about it. Have you ever explained the number perfectly, yet the client or board still said, let me think about it? We've seen this in one of the example also. And they say, for example, let me think about it. We will revisit this. We'll come back to you. Let's park this for now. Yes, we all have faced this kind of situation. And that gap between understanding the number and acting on them, I repeat, the gap between understanding the number and acting on them is where persuasion lives. There comes the persuasion, that you are understanding the number when you saw in the example also here, the first statement and the second statement, where it is not only about understanding the number, it is also about you are explaining them why it is important. If you don't do this, what is going to happen and what is your recommendation? So explaining the number in today's scenario is no longer enough. Why? Because in if you'll see in today's environment, decisions are delayed, and they are delayed. I had answered this question also just now, where you scan the QR code. So I was talking about the data. We all are, even the decision makers who takes a decision, they are overloaded with data. And in today's AI world, everyone has that AI dashboard. So many dashboards are there, reports are there. We all are flooded with data. We are data rich, but then decision poor. And we also see that there are people from different disciplines. They're often non-financial professionals on the boards who don't want to see the data only. They want somebody who can interpret the data, who need translation of data, that I can see the dashboard, but then what does this mean? Data does not give you decision. The thinking decision, it comes from or the recommendations come from the chartered accountants, from the financial professionals, from human being. AI can't do it. The dashboards can't do it, right? So When we are flooded with data, when we are decision poor, when the boards are multidisciplinary, in that case, explaining number is no longer enough. Another point we'll see risk is both emotional and rational. So, how a recommendation is delivered by a CA, it actually determines whether the stakeholder or the decision maker is going to trust it. So it is not only about giving the recommendation, but the mode of delivery, how you're delivering it. So your vocal components, how you're pausing, how your pitch is, how your vocal tone is, and we will see this how all these things it determines your presence, and it makes a lot of impact on how your stakeholder will get influence, and will they take your recommendation seriously, will they act on it or not, right? So there are many factors which tells us, which suggest that explaining number is no longer enough. And with this I'll show you uh, the slide which I have put in here, and that is actually very important. Why explaining number is no longer enough. And these are the points. So, because we all have expertise in explaining the number, but then how to deliver it so that our recommendation gets valued, our recommendation gets acted upon is something which we need to work towards, right? So, uh, at times, or I will say actually most of the times, we know that technical correctness is expected of out of a CA. We all are technically correct. We all have very sound credentials, but then it is no longer a differentiating factor. I've shared this already. I want to repeat because this is very important. Accuracy is the entry ticket for a chartered accountant, but then influence is the value multiplier. We know that why this shift has happened, as we just discussed, decision makers are overloaded with data. Boards and clients have people from different disciplines. They don't need only data, they want somebody who can interpret the data, give recommendation in a confident, clear, calm manner, right? And we may be 100% right, we're not saying that. We may be 100% accurate, yet 0% influential. Yet 0% influential, as I said, because maybe because not maybe, but then 110% sure, I would say 0% influential because we were not able to make our presence felt. So how can we make our presence felt? We'll see this in the next part of this webcast. So there is one more example which I want you to show, that there is there is one approach which is, I would say, maybe uh, sorry, give me a moment. Yes, yeah, here it is, explaining number. For example, the other one approach, which I will say old approach, there's a scenario. The scenario is of audit committee, and one of our finance professionals says that there's a 12% variance in inventory valuation due to non-compliance with AS2. The board members, they are hearing their nods, no urgency, there is no trigger of decision making. Now, if we add the approach, if we add some elements, and what are those elements? These are elements of vocal components. These are elements of being more, getting more influenced. Uh, how can I influence my decision makers? We will see that what are the factors, but then what is the difference in approach? Let's see this currently. So the new approach would be, if we add some components like, let me read this out for you. If we say this 12% variance indicates a valuation risk that could materially impact reported profits and attract audit scrutiny. My recommendation is to correct it this quarter to avoid regulatory exposure. So what I'm doing here, I'm telling you that what is going to be the impact and what is my recommendation. In the old approach, what we are doing, we are stating the fact and we are telling the reason also. But that's it. And in the new approach, which can influence the decisions of our decision maker, there we are telling what is the impact and what is the recommendation from the financial profession, from the chartered accountant. And in this case, what happens? This influences decision makers to act on this, to take decision on this. So discussion, it begins. They don't say thank you, I'll come back to you, but then they start discussion and discussing this, and the decision follows. See the same data, same scenario, same organization. Only what is that? Only the difference in approaches there. The difference in the way you're framing your approach. So, in the first example, in the old approach, you can see being 100% right and being 100% accurate does not mean that you will be 100% influential. Here you are 0% influence because you could not influence. Why? Because you did not add the impact part, you did not share your recommendation. Right? What are the dimensions through which we can move from old approach to new approach? Apart from the adding impact and apart from adding recommendations. Let's see this. Okay. And before that, how the role has evolved, how the CA's role has evolved from the from the traditional role of being a number cruncher. The modern expectation is it is not only about crunching numbers, it is more about deriving the insights, deriving the actionable insights, which will enable the stakeholders to take decisions. Traditional role was more of a compliance checker. Now it is not. Now it is about assessing the risk, interpreting those risks, right? So you can see how the role is evolving day by day. Earlier it was more about reporting. Now it is not only about reporting, it is about advising on the way ahead. Earlier it was only you are telling the numbers, explaining the numbers. Now it is more about how will you frame your explanation with impact, with recommendation, so that you can influence your stakeholders to take decisions. So you can see your key takeaway for a chartered accountant. Influence does not mean selling or pushing an agenda. It actually means making risk visible to the stakeholders, clarifying, telling them that these are the impacts which you are going to face, and guiding them on prudent decisions so that we can protect the interest of our stakeholders. So this is something which is really important and we need to see. So if we stay only in the traditional role, we will cease to grow. We all know this. We will not be able, if we don't evolve, we will not be able to grow. So we need to move, we need to evolve from the traditional role to the modern role where the expectations are entirely different, right? So I'll show you one example here. The example is of client advisory scenario I've given. So say, for example, I'm talking about the old traditional approach. In this case, the advisor is saying, as per projections, cash flow may tighten in quarter three, right? So this was a traditional approach, but then according to the modern approach, if I have to say which will have influence on the stakeholders, same situation, same data, same person, but then framing is different. Now, the framing is if cash flow tightens in quarter three as projected, operational continuity could be affected. We are telling them the impact and followed by the recommendation. So, the recommendation is I recommend initiating a credit buffer now to avoid reactive decisions later. So, you can see I recommend is something which is very important. What is the impact of not doing it, which you are suggesting? That should be also clear. So we need to highlight, we need to emphasize on the phrase I recommend. However, most of us we tend to avoid it, right? So this is something which is very important. Now there are three different components which we are going to talk about, and these three components are three things. And what is the difference? We'll see this. First is informing. Again, old approach, I would say. Second is convincing. In between, I would say. Third is persuading, which is about influencing in an ethical manner, right? And there is a clear contrast between these three. The first earlier approach was of a chartered accountant was only giving the information. This is something what has happened, right? So there is no action. You can't see any action there. For example, you can see here in the informing part, the objective is only to share the information. Only you are sharing the facts. This is yes, this was or this is still the strength of a chartered accountant. That goes without saying. Example I'm giving you, the tax liability will increase by 8%. What are you doing? You're only giving the information. So there is, you don't expect any action to happen because this has been communicated, end of the story. That's it. Now, the second approach, which is more about convincing. You're trying to tell others that you are right. Okay. So what happens when you say you are right? Naturally, the other person, it tries to listen to it partially, right? Because you're not involving the other person. You're not trying to influence other person, whether or you're not putting a point across wherein you are showing that you are actually safeguarding the interest of your stakeholders. It is not clear because you're only trying to prove that you are right. So the example I'm giving here, for example, if you look at the data carefully, you'll see this is the correct approach. So which shows that you are right. And this triggers the defensiveness from the other party. So again, this is not so good approach. What is the good approach or the best approach is persuading, where you're trying to influence your stakeholders in an ethical manner, not forcefully. So here the objective is that you are trying to support your stakeholders so that they can act on the recommendation which you have given. And you can work on a collaborative manner. So if the example I've given here is, given the tax increase and its cash impact, the prudent option would be to restructure now rather than absorb the cost later. So the impact is very, very clear. This will be followed by the recommendation, right? So this leads to the ownership. This influences your stakeholders to take action. So these are three different things, and we need to move from informing to persuading. This was the whole idea of showing this. So the old approach was more focused on informing, and the new approach or the more evolved approach or need of an hour is we should move from informing to persuading. So persuasion is the need of an hour in our profession, right? So the uh, the aspects of informing and convincing and persuading are actually different. If you see, the aspect is, if you talk about focus, in informing, the focus is only on facts. In convincing, the focus is I am right. And in persuading, where the focus is that we should take some decision. We should act on the recommendation. So action, decision, this is the focus area when you're persuading others. Your tone is very neutral because information, when you're informing, you're not thinking of any action. When you're convincing other, your tone, vocal tone I'm talking about, is assertive. You're putting a point across. And In persuading, it is more of assured. You are very much sure because definitely you are a number cruncher, you know your thing, what you're talking about, but then you're framing a statement in such a way which is influencing your stakeholders to take decision. So your vocal tone is more of assured. And the outcome in case of informing, it is you're putting things into place only to make your stakeholders aware of this something which has happened already. So it is only about creating awareness, no action. What is the outcome of convincing? More of defensiveness, more of resistance. Because, see, you're telling your stakeholders, I'm right. I'm right. You're not bothered whether the other party is okay with your statement or not, right? In case of persuasion, the outcome is you are framing your statement in such a way that leads to action. So the outcome is action, decision. All these are the outcome of persuasion. So persuasion is the best way whenever you are negotiating, whenever you are interacting, when you're working on projects, when you're trying to influence your stakeholders. Stakeholders could be internal, could be external, right? This also applies in your personal life, as I mentioned. When you're talking to your kids, your parents, your grandmom, your neighbors, your friends, this is something which will help you to lead a more successful and impactful life where we work on win-win situation. It is not about I win, you lose, or you lose, I win. It is or both of you lose. No. This is something wherein we come to a platform wherein we are I am also happy, you're also happy. That ways, right? So as I said, this applies in both the life, personal life, professional life. However, we're talking about here professional particularly. Now I'm giving you a statement here. The statement is the internal control weakness may increase operational risk. Now, I want to ask you, do you think it is informing, convincing, persuading, or out of this, or what is missing in this? I'm sure you must have come to the conclusion. This is only a statement. The internal control weakness may increase operational risks. So, as a finance professional, what I'm doing here, I'm only informing. I'm neither convincing nor persuading. Because what is missing here? The action part is missing here. There is no action, there is no recommendation. So, this is only about creating awareness. This is very neutral. And as a CA, what happens? We often stop at informing because we think neutrality gives professionalism, that our job is to inform. No, our job is not to only inform, but our job is to present our recommendation. Our job is to tell our stakeholders what is going to be the impact. And our job is to guide them, guide our stakeholders. So, in reality, if you see neutrality without guidance, it often leads to indecision. So, there will not be any decision. If you're neutral in your tone, I agree you are professional, but then you are only informing. You are not influencing the stakeholders to take a decision. So the more persuasive version will be this control weakness increases operational risk. Increases operational risk. This is what? This is the impact. And could lead to financial misstatements. So I recommend strengthening controls immediately to prevent future exposure. So you can see the difference between the first statement and if I have to put it in a more persuasive manner, how can I put it? So again, I request we should, in our profession, we should come out of neutrality and we should blend our neutrality with guidance, with our recommendations, which will help our stakeholders to take decisions. And this will be in their interest, right? Again, being more ethical. In no ways we should not adopt any unethical means to influence our stakeholders. That is not persuasion, right? I hope it is clear. Now, this is another topic. This is presence as the foundation of persuasion. There's a word presence, and presence is coming before persuasion. Before persuasion happens, presence is there. So, what is this presence? Let's see this. What is this presence, and why presence is coming before persuasion? Okay, this is really important, and please hear me out, and you can take a note. Whenever we are presenting our report to a board, right, our stakeholders, they subconsciously ask two questions. What they're asking: number one, can I trust this person? Number two, are they confident in their recommendation? I repeat, and this is really important. I'm talking about first impression. First impression, the first 10 seconds, what happens whenever you are presenting your findings, your report to the board, to the stakeholders? The stakeholders, they are gauging you, they're judging you, and subconsciously they're asking you, and they're asking themselves two questions. Number one, can trust this person? Number two, are they confident in their recommendation? Right? So if they find yes to these two answers, the decision follows. You know, if this is the presence, and if presence is weak, persuasion fails. Regardless of how much data you have, how wonderful your report is. So regardless of data strength, if your presence is weak, your persuasion fails. So executive presence signals that your three element, and these three elements which makes your presence, number one is vocal authority. We'll see what all comes under vocal authority. So vocal authority is number one. Number two, your pauses, where you're pausing. Number three is calm delivery. So executive presence signals that increase persuasive impact. And these are, as I said, vocal authority, number one. Number two, pauses. Number three is a calm delivery. So we need to ask ourselves, what do my voice, my pace, and my body language, my posture communicate before I speak? Even before you speak, people they judge you. Can I trust this person? Are they confident in their recommendations? So this is something which the stakeholders they asked at a subconscious level in the first 10 seconds. So the first 10 seconds are really important. And persuasion does not begin when you explain the numbers. It begins when people decide whether I should listen to you or not. That is important because the subconscious mind it filters the stakeholders use. Stakeholders could be like your clients, boards, regulators, and as I said, they're subconsciously asking, can I trust this person? Do they believe in their own recommendations? Only then I will believe them. So if the answer is like not sure, or the answer is no, the listening goes away, and you will not be able to gain their trust, right? So these things are really important, and that's the reason persuasion comes before the presence. Presence comes before the persuasion. The presence, as I said, three elements. These are the elements of your vocal presence, how calmly you're presenting, and where are you pausing. So think about all these elements before you start presenting. That is very important. So as I said, the first 10 seconds are very important. I'm sure you're taking a note of this. As I said, these are two things which the stakeholders ask. And if the presence is weak, persuasion fails. No matter, as I said, how strong the data is or how detailed your report is. Now, I'm giving you one example here. Say, presenter, there are two presenters, presenter A and presenter B. Presenter A speaks really fast, speech is fast. There's no pauses in between. The tone is defensive. So the reaction most likely would be, let's review this again. Let's see this again, or I'll come back to you later. These kind of things you may get to hear. Similar data, same organization, another presenter presenting similar kind of report. Only difference is presenter B has a calm pace, right? Does not mean very slow pace. Both are different. Calm and fast are different. Measured pauses. Pause is something which is very important when you're talking. If you want your audience to pay attention on some particular keywords, if you pause, you will immediately get the attention of your audience. So, measured pauses is very important. A short voice is important. So, when presenter B is using all this, the reaction most likely would be, let's discuss the way forward. Let's discuss the next step. So, there is no change in terms of number. As I said, the organization is same. The only difference is in terms of presence. Okay, I hope the point presence is clear. So, what actually this means? What executive presence? And this is the core of our webcast today. We're talking about presence. From presence to persuasion, right? This is all about. So, what is this? Kindly pay attention to this and take a note of these important points wherever you think it is going to help you in your professional life, and it will definitely. So, let's see what executive presence means for us. It means authority, but then authority in a calm way, in a cooler way. When you speak very fast, what happens? The thoughts or what you have thought of sharing, it will not come to your brain so fast. So when you speak at a particular pace, in a calm pace, your brain, you can access your thoughts from your brain. You can share all those which you have planned to share. So you should present the facts without rush, not in a rush. Okay. And the audience, the board, the client, they will be also able to conceptualize what you're saying. They will be able to make sense out of those words which you're sharing. So this means you are sharing with confidence and without arrogance when you are speaking in a calm manner. So this is also about you are under control. For example, if somebody is asking a question, you're not getting defensive because you can access your resources from your brain. There is a part of brain called as hippocampus, which stores all the learnings, right? And if you are cool, you can access hippocampus. I'm telling you a few lines from neuroscience. But then if you are fast, if you are under stress, what happens? There is a hormone called as cortisol, so stress hormone that gets released and you can't access the hippocampus. So when you can't access the hippocampus, you can't access your learnings, your thought process, which you have planned to share. Probably you can't access that. So it is always effective to present your findings in a calm manner. It shows you are very much in control, right? Another side, on the left side, I mentioned what it is not. It does not mean you should shout on the top of your voice. It does not mean you are the only one who is dominating the room. You're not allowing others to share their inputs. You're not giving them any freedom to ask questions. So you are not the only one. You should not be the one who is dominating the entire room, right? So it is not about being more aggressive. It is also not about being more charismatic or more dramatic. That's the reason I've mentioned theatrics, right? So presence is more about building credibility, as I said in the beginning also. And it shows that how can you reflect your credibility during your presentation, even before the data or the evidence comes up even before you share your first slide, right? So it executive presence means you can see your calm authority, clarity without rush, without getting into a rush. So these are things which makes our executive presence felt. And these are very important, as I said, at a subconscious level, stakeholders, they get that feeling of trust that yes, I can trust this person. This is someone whom I can trust. So if the recommendations comes from this person, it is more likely that your recommendations, if it is ethical, correct, it is likely to follow the decision. Before that, your presence is important. Your executive presence is important. I hope I am making sense and this is going to, you're going to apply this in your real life, and I'm sure you're going to benefit if you apply this. Otherwise, it is of no use. Okay. Uh, One of the again very important part of this webcast, we are talking about the presence signals which leads to persuasion. What is this we saw? What is executive presence? And what are the components, I would say, of the executive presence? So when we are talking, our voice is not only sharing the data, it is telling the other person that you can trust me. As we saw, calm authority we talked about. So this comes from the controlled pace of voice. So you are not in a rush. Your rate of speech is not fast. Ish. When I say not fast, does not mean very slow. It should be at a rate wherein the audience can absorb the information. So it means speaking slightly slower than you think. Only then you can access your resources from the hippocampus, from the brain, right? So it means speaking slightly slower than you think because we think very fast. And this allows you to access those thought process which you have thought of sharing. And this is really important. Why? Because when you are speaking very fast, when your rate of speech is very fast, it shows that you are not sure about your facts. Maybe you are in a hurry to finish your presentation or your reporting. And when you are talking in a controlled way, it shows that you are very much sure of what you're sharing. You are very much sure of your recommendation. You have thought through. So that's the reason controlled pace is very important. Purposefully, I mentioned not speed, controlled, right? The second one is wherever you want your stakeholders to pay more attention, intentionally uses pause for a second. So very brief pauses before and after important points. This actually helps you to grab more attention of your stakeholder. But then if your silence is not planned, so because if your unplanned silence is something like hesitation, but then when you have planned it, for example, the key takeaway we're talking about, so that shows your authority. I've given an example here. See, based on these findings, my recommendation is, so what are you doing? You're pausing here. Based on these findings, you take a pause and then you say, my recommendation is to act on this quarter, for example, right? So where you want somebody to give more attention, which will help them in decision making, we should take a pause for few seconds. Clear endings. Once your presentation is at the end, the ending should be very clear. It should allow your voice to settle downward at the end of decision statements, because you have concluded and you want your stakeholders to take decisions, because after that decision should follow. So I've mentioned why it is important, because a settled ending, it sounds decisive. A rising ending sounds tentative and is open for debate. If If it is not settled at the end, which means you have not concluded. We need more debate. We need to deliberate on it, right? So these three signals are very, very important when we are talking about presence. Some more points I would like to add here. As I said, when we're speaking too fast, we can't get through the data, right? So, rising pitch at the end of the sentence, it actually sounds that you're not sure, you're not concluding. So, your voice, as I said, I want to repeat also here, your voice is not just carrying the information, it is signaling trust, it is signaling conviction. So, that's the reason we should be aware of our pace. Our pace should be controlled, right? Because when we're speaking very fast, we are sounding reactive. So, and we are sounding that we are not very much sure about what we are saying. So it signals uncertainty. Intentional pauses is very important as we saw, and the clear findings, not the flat pitch. Okay, that is important. Varying our pitch is okay while speaking, but then settling down your pitch when we are reaching towards conclusion and recommendation is important. Settling your pitch means, let me clarify this also for some of you, because this, like, I was also wondering what is this. Let me put this in more simple words. When we are saying settle your pitch, it means ending an important statement or ending your recommendation so that it sounds complete, it sounds calm and thought through. It is not open for debate. This is something which you have given, which you have concluded, right? So, when we are talking about settling your pitch, it means we are saying that this is something which is really complete. This is something which I'm recommending. It does not mean that you're speaking in a very flat or monotonous tone. It also does not mean that you're forcing your voice to get lower. It does not mean that. It means that your voice is coming to a natural resting point at the end of the key statement, at the end of the recommendation. This is what settling your pitch means, which uh, which is mentioned in the point here. And why these are important for persuasion? I'm sure you must have got by this time. Why we are saying this vocal authority is important, this control pace is important. Why we are saying this? Because if we follow this will allow our stakeholders to listen for a longer duration, right? Recommendations which is coming from you, these are taken seriously. And when your vocal authority is missing, you know what happens? Even the strong data feels uncertain. Even the strong dash report feels uncertain and decision gets delayed. That's the reason your executive presence, your vocal authorities is very important. Your recommendations are taken seriously, and question which they will ask you, that will be more constructive in nature. It will not be to shut you down. So we going forward, I would request you to focus on how you are going to present your report, how your local authority is, right? Because these things play a very important role. When you're delivering in a calm manner, you're perceived as competent, because calm means you are someone who knows your subject. Your recommendation is valuable. That kind of perception your stakeholders gets. So you will not get no defensive justifications, no over-explaining. So calm means this. Calm means even pacing. You're not getting defensive. When somebody is asking question, you can answer in a calm manner. So high pressure movements, when it happens during the presentation, when there is high pressure, if you are delivering in a calm manner, you can handle objections, you can handle challenges. right? So calm delivery, it actually tells your stakeholders this person has thought this through. This person knows what he's saying. So calm delivery, intentional pauses, controlled pace, all these things, it makes your presence felt. Excuse me. With this, I'll take you to an activity. The activity here is I'm going to read this line, and or maybe you can also try this yourself. This tells you about the presence contrast, right? The first will be, for example, I've given a line, this control weakness increases financial exposure. How I read this was a flat tone. If I have to read this in a fast manner, how would I read this? This control weakness increases financial exposure. So this was fast paced, flat tone. This was rushed. I did not pause. Now, if I have to go for presence driven, what I will do? I'll do this in a calm pace. I'll pause before increases. Let me do this for you. You can see the difference. So this control weaknesses, I paused, increase financial exposure. So pausing at the right place, it this creates a difference. So I want to ask you, which version would you trust more in a boardroom? Something which is more rushed or something which is more presence driven? I'm sure you will talk about, you will go for the second option, which is presence driven, right? Now let me ask you a question, and I want you to reflect. When you are presenting in front of the board or in front of the stakeholder, how are you sounding? Ask yourself, does my voice communicate? How does my pace? How is my pace? How am I standing if it is face to face? How is my hand movement? If you're crossing your hands, it is closed. It shows that you are closed person. You are not open to impulse. You're not open to feedback, right? So in that case, you need to reflect that how I'm going to present. Will I be at a control pace or fast pace, or I'm going to deliver in a calm manner? So these are things for reflection. Maybe you can take a note and ask yourself before you share, before you present in front of the board or stakeholders. As I said, could be internal, could be external, right? So you don't need, the idea is I mentioned here, you don't need a new personality. You need conscious control of existing signals. The signals which I've just shared with you, you need to think about it consciously. You need to be more aware of your vocal tone. You need to be more aware of your rate of speech. Are you delivering in a calm manner, or you are in a rush, or your rate of speech is really fast so that people can't absorb or you can't access your thought? So you need to do a diagnostic for yourself, and only you can do this for yourself, right? So before presenting, ask these questions. How am I communicating? How my posture is? How my expression is if it is face to face? How is my vocal tone, right? So these are questions too we need to reflect. Now, I I've shown you what is persuasion. That was in generic. Now I've customized this for you. What is actually persuasion if I see from a chartered accountant's point of view, right? So persuasion for us, it is not about emotion or manipulation. It is about helping stakeholders arrive at the right decision using three things we are talking about. There's number one is clarity, second is logic, and third is trust, right? So it is not only about emotion or manipulation. Emotion, if you're talking about, it is in the form of trust, where you build a component of emotion also. We'll see this in the coming part of this webcast. And when you stop at explanation, decisions stall. Why I say this, decision stalls when decisions are delayed. When you only explain numbers, your decisions are delayed. We saw that, right? But then when your presentation tells you what is the impact, what is your recommendation, what you're doing, you're actually guiding. When you guide decisions, your value multiplies, right? And how do you guide decisions? As I said, by adding the impact of the numbers, by adding your recommendations, by making your presence felt, executive presence felt. And how you can make your executive presence felt? By inculcating the vocal authority, by applying the vocal authority, which comes through the components of voice, through controlled pace, calm delivery, intentional pauses. When we apply these, so these these components, this all these makes our presence felt. And presence, it comes before the persuasion. Now let's see the principles of persuasion. The another aspect, we have seen the vocal authority. We saw that explaining number is not enough. We also saw that presence, it comes before the persuasion, right? And now we'll see what is actually persuasion from our profession point of view. So it is not just about selling, it is about aligning logic, trust, and emotion to help others see value in what's right. It is not direct emotion we're talking about. It is about emotion to help others, which means help stakeholders so that they can see that the recommendations which I'm making, it is right, is it actionable or not. So as a CA, you use persuasion every day, not only in professional life, as I said, in personal life also. We all do, with data, logic, and integrity. Let's see this in more detail. I'll talk about the power of persuasion, this ELP way. This was published in the HBR. HBR is Harvard Business Review. This formula is given by Aristotle. I'm sure you've heard this name, Aristotle, right? He was a Greek philosopher, very ancient, and he was the one. This formula is like around more than 2,000 years ago. Aristotle, he outlined this formula on how to become a master of persuasion in his work Rhetoric. So Aristotle identified three timeless pillars of persuasion that remain as powerful today as they were around thousands of years ago. So understanding and balancing these elements like ethos, pathos, and logos will transform your presentation into compelling narratives. Let's see how. Because this is something which drives action, this is something which drives influence. So I've put an acronym so that we can remember this. So ELP stands for ethos, L stands for logos, and P stands for pathos. So what is actually ethos? Ethos stands for credibility, number one. Let me tell you in one word. Ethos means credibility. So this talks about establishing our expertise and trustworthiness. This talks about, this is basis the kind of relevant use experience we have, the kind of knowledge we have, credentials we demonstrate, our subject matter expertise. So this is about building credential. Now, if I talk about L part, which is L stands for logos, and logos is all about logic. So, which means presenting the clear evidence, which talks about the logical reasoning and data, supporting your arguments with facts, statistics, and sound analysis. These are part of logos or logic. Now comes the third, which is P. P stands for pathos, and this means emotion. So connecting with the audience feelings. For example, in our case, it could be stakeholders. So how can we connect with the stakeholders at an emotional level? We can use examples, stories, scenarios. We can share the impact of the data. So when we hear the impact, what happens? We are able to build emotional connection with the stakeholders, and there we can build a connect with them. For example, if I give you, when we are pitching for the internal control improvements, We can combine our audit expertise, which is like ethos, with the emotional impact of potential losses. Like if I say that there is this is something, some kind of loss is going to happen. So what are we building? We are building an emotional connect, right? So I repeat, when pitching for the internal control movements, we can combine our audit expertise like ethos with the emotional impact of potential losses, which is pathos, and concrete data showing cost benefit analysis, which comes from logos. So in that case, our statement is more persuasive. So the balanced persuasion could be, it is a summation of ethos, which is credibility, plus logos, which is logic, plus pathos, which is connection. So if we're talking about pathos, it is more about connection. Now, what we've covered is like presence, right? Executive presence. Executive presence is what? This strengthens our ethos, which builds our credibility. How we structure the message, this with evidence, with data, with impact. So message, structure of the message, this sharpens our logos. The way we are framing the impact, this activate the pathos, right? And the result would be decision, trust, and action. This is something very important I'm sharing with you. Kindly pay attention. What we have done so far, we've talked about executive presence. So I'm relating the learning which we have just learned with the ELP, right? So first is executive presence. What happens if you see this in the context of ELP? Executive presence, it strengthens our ethos, that is our credibility. How we are structuring our message, this sharpens our logos, that is the logical part. And how we are framing the impact, this act and the recommendation, this activates the pathos part of the presentation. And the result in this case would be decisions from the stakeholders, trust of the stakeholders, and action from the stakeholders. Right? So, this is how we can connect the executive presence to persuasion. So, ethos, if again, if we talk about, as we covered, ethos is more about professional credibility and trust, right? So, in the real life, if you see the real C application, this is more about qualification. This gives you high credential, experience, and calm authority. So, this helps in building the credibility. Now, logos, evidence based reasoning. So, when we are structuring our message, which includes the evidences, compliance logic, risk analysis, so there we are covering the logic part of the persuasion. And the third is pathos, where we're talking about the connect or the emotional connect with the stakeholder. So, when we are talking about business risk, the consequences of not doing something or doing something, reassurance, this is connecting to the pathos part of the persuasion. So, the persuasion is the all the elements of persuasion is very much related to the executive presence, which we covered just now. So, most of us we're already using logos part, which is about data, which is about evidences. But then very few of us is using the two parts. So what we need to do it is we should consciously leverage the two other important, which is parts of the persuasion, which is like ethos, which is building credibilities, and building the connect with the stakeholder. How can we build the connect? By sharing the consequence, by sharing the impact of doing something or not doing something. And if we are combining all three, ethos, pathos, and logos, in that case, we will be able to influence our decision makers, and the recommendation will be more action oriented, and this will result into decision making. Decision will definitely follow if we are able to blend all three elements of persuasion, right? As of now, our focus is more on the logos, I would say, and less on the ethos and pathos. And if there is less focus on ethos and pathos, that is the reason our recommendations gets delayed or get registered. But then if we start blending all three together, you will see the difference. Our recommendations, it will not get delayed. It will definitely get recommended. So going forward, I request you to blend all three, because these all threes, this will help you to get your recommendations implemented, and your presence will be felt, because it's a part of executive presence only, right? Now let me ask you another question. This question is about, which situation do you find most challenging in your real life? And then there again, you can scan the QR code or go to slido.com and enter this QR code 3298594. I request, go to slido.com either and enter the this code as hash 3298594, or you can either scan the QR code and tell me which situation do you find is most challenging for you as of now. Is it convincing a client? Is it presenting to management? Is it handling difficult questions or keeping your audience interested? Let's actively participate. I just want to hear from you. No answer is right or wrong, as I said. And let me see. Okay. Can I see some responses here? Which situation do you find is more challenging or it is not challenging? Okay. Keeping audience interested is very challenging. Convincing a client is also challenging. Great. I completely agree. At times it happens. But then now I'm sure if you go, okay, presenting to management, some said, okay, two has come up. Okay, keeping our audience interested, most of you have put in. Okay, Les, thank you so much for your responses. I can see all of you are actively participating. Thank you, a big thank you. Let's move ahead. And I'm sure now you can implement the learnings from the webcast and you will be able to handle these challenges, handling difficult questions. Sure, we'll talk about this also. Okay, as we saw the ethos, pathos, and logos, I'll quickly cover this. The ethos, it acts as the credibility multiplier. This is our strength, but then this is often underutilized, right? So what it means for us, how you come across, how you present yourself with your vocal authority, with your posture, with your knowledge, determines whether your data is trusted or not. So authority is signaled before logic is evaluated. I hope you're making sense out of it. This is so important. Authority means your vocal authority, the way you are presenting, the way your executive presence is coming across. It signals that you're somebody whom stakeholders can trust, even before the logic comes in, even before your slide appears on the screen, right? So, what all the things you can do, as we saw, your calm delivery, intentional pauses, your controlled pace, clear recommendations, ethical language markers. So these are some of the things which we can utilize. So examples, for example, based on our audit findings and industry benchmarks, the prudent approach would be, and you can share the recommendation, right? Before that, you can share the impact as well. So this is only the credibility part which I've covered. We will see the other uh, parts of the persuasion. So the second one is logos, which talks about how you're structuring your logical evidence that leads to decision. So what happens? We need to derive insights from the data. Implications comes from the insight and your recommendations comes from the implication. So we need not to over explain it. We just need to tell them this is how it is. The data is this, the insight which we derive from the data is XYZ. If you, this is the implication of the insight, and I recommend this. If we do this, this is the benefit we are going to do, we are going to get. If we don't do this, this is the loss we are going to incur, right? So this should be very straightforward and very clear. And there are many problem solving framework also. So what, now what? So you can use any of the tool from the problem solving, and you can structure your, or you can frame your logic like that. The example I've given here, this variance indicates a control gap which increases exposure by X. So therefore, the recommended action is, and you can share your recommendation, right? And if so, you can share that from where you have picked it, from where it has come, and this is how the flow shows. So this is the structured way to present your logic. Now the pathos third. So this is the missing piece is what? Impact without emotion. Show them the impact, but then definitely include the emotion part. Why I say so? When I say patho, this does not mean that you should be dramatic or you don't need not to work in a theater to implement pathos, right? Pathos is more about we are supporting our stakeholders to feel the relevance of risk or the opportunity. So there is an opportunity, go and grab it if you follow my recommendation. And if you don't follow my recommendation, this is the kind of risk which you're going to face. So this is the element which we're talking about. It is not direct emotion, but an emotion related to the impact. So this could be positive, this could be negative. When I say positive means there's opportunity which may miss, or there is risk which may incur. So how can we use this? By highlighting the consequences. So by sharing the impact of doing or not doing it. Framing risk in business terms. Addressing stakeholders' anxiety. So this could be board, from the management, from the investors. Anxiety maybe from either of the side, from one of the side. So the example is like if this remains unaddressed, it could attract regulatory scrutiny and affect stakeholder confidence. So this is one of the example which we are sharing. So if we can blend all these three pieces, we can definitely make a compelling narrative to the stakeholders. These are some of the examples. For example, uh, if we are sharing audit findings, right, to the senior management, the purpose of persuasion would be to get buy-in for process improvement, right? The purposes. So example could be, if we implement this control now, we can save rupees 3 crore in potential leakages next quarter. So what we're using here, we're using the data, which means logic, and we're using pathos here. Pathos, how come? We're using emotion here. We're giving them a feeling that you can save rupees 3 crore, right? Otherwise, you will lose. So the feeling of gaining and the feeling of loss is there. So where there is feeling, there is pathos. Similarly, let's talk about another, like presenting to the board, and you are presenting to the board of directors to gain approval for strategy or policy. So example could be, by adopting this accounting framework, we will not only ensure compliance but also enhance market perception. So what are you using again? You're using logic here, and you're using your credibility ethos by adopting this accounting framework, which very clearly shows that I'm the one who knows about accounting framework, and I'm the one who can recommend you to adopt this. So the logos part and the ethos part. Similarly, some more examples I've included for your reference. For you can see here, like educating non-finance stakeholders. So the context here is business terms and implies, and the purpose of persuasion is to explain the complex accounting in simple terms. So the example, like think of deferred revenue like prepaid rent. Okay, think of deferred revenue like prepaid rent. So this is the money received before the service is provided. So what are you doing here? You're using pathos, emotional connect here, and you're using logos as well. So you can see in all these examples which we use day in, day out in our professional life, we are using how, if we're using the components of persuasion, we can make our articulation more impactful, more effective, and we can get our things done. We can make our recommendations more clear to the stakeholders, right? Or something which leads to the decision making, which is more action oriented. So these are some of the points which clearly shows that going ahead, we should blend all these three elements of persuasion to make our speech more persuasive or to make our approach more persuasive, right? With this, we have come to the case study. I would request you to scan the QR code, or you can, yeah, just go to the scan this QR code and you will be directed to a Google form. The case study is there. Just go ahead, read the case study, and answer the questions. We are not registering your email ID. I can't see your name. I can only see your answers, and then we can discuss this case study. The case is about the case of missing millions, right? Please scan the QR code and uh, it will redirect you to the Google form where the case study is there. Kindly read the case study and answer the questions. The questions are very easy and simple. If you read the case study, you can figure it out. And this is based on the learnings which we have covered so far. And then I will also log into my Google form and I'll see how many of you have responded. I'll wait for a minute. Kindly share the QR code and go to the Google form. I hope you have done it. Once you scan, you will be redirected to the Google form where the details of the case is there. This is titled as the case of the missing millions. Let me also share my screen with you. Okay, you can see the case here also, and I'll read this out for you. Please share your responses in the Google form. Okay, this story is about this story. The title, it is titled as the case of missing millions, and then I read this out for you. It was the final week of March. An intern audit team led by CA Ria Mehta was reviewing vendors' payment for a large manufacturing client. Everything looked fine until one small entry caught her eye of 1200 payment labeled miscellaneous vendor adjustment. Ria did not jump to conclusions. She calmly told the CFO, we have completed 30 plus vendor reconciliations across similar manufacturing units this year, and this entry pattern is unusual. I would like to trace it back to the source. Her tone was factual, professional, and confident. She used her experience and expertise, not emotion, to build trust in her judgment. When Ria's team pulled the ledger trail, they found a pattern. 16 entries over 6 months, each under 2,000, all booked under different vendor names. Same approvers, same approval initials. She presented her findings logically. Each transaction seems minor, but collectively this totals 9.8 lakh rupees, 9.8 lakh. The pattern indicates deliberate fragmentation, possibly to bypass approval limits. She showed data charts, approval threshold, and policy clauses, allowing the numbers to speak for themselves. Then she paused and said gently, "This isn't about 9.8 lakhs, it is about something deeper. The trust this company has built over 40 years." You can note the words which she is using. This isn't about rupees 9.8 lakhs, it is about something deeper, the trust. The trust is what? It is more about emotion. The trust this company has built over 40 years. Every small lapse weakens that trust. Imagine how your employees feel when leadership models transparency. Imagine how investors view a company that acts before being forced to. The virtual room went quiet in that moment. She moved the audience from compliance to conscience. So, how can we identify? Do you think there are some elements of ethos, pathos, and logos here? The elements of persuasion in this case? Yes, there are. There are all the three elements, and I will I will share how they if when she was using the term trust, as I said, trust was something which was related to the emotion part, right? So I'll pick this one by one. So the conclusion which we can make from the trust from the case study is, in the case itself, it says that within a week the company implemented new approval workflows. This was decision once it was followed, and the vendor audit controls. The CFO later told her, "We did not act because of the data alone. We acted because you made us care about what the data meant." Right? Because the way she presented was something which moved the decision makers to take action. Where was the ethos element? Ethos, it referenced from the case, it was referenced from the audit experience which she had, the kind of experience, the kind of knowledge she was carrying. This builds the credibility and trust of the charter accountant Ria, right? The logos was, what was the logo? She showed the pattern of the data and the reasoning that created the logical conviction. And this was the logos part of the case. And if you, when we talked about the trust, she spoke about the trust, she spoke about values, and this inspired emotional commitment. And there came pathos, right? So all the three elements are very much present in the case itself. And this was very clear that when she presented, the decision makers, they had deep influence and they implemented the new approval workflows and the vendor audit controls. And that's the reason the CFO told her that they did not act because of the data alone. It was not because of the logic alone or the evidence alone or the logos alone. They acted because they could see that she's someone who cared. The emotion part of it we're talking about. She cared and how she interpreted the data. So which means she, because she clearly saw that this is a trusted company, and if we don't do this, what is the impact which is going to have? And that's the reason they acted, because she was able to interpret the data. So now I want to ask you, which pillar out of three, ethos, logos, or pathos, which one of you use most often? Which one comes to you naturally? Just think about it. And which one could you develop further to make your persuasion more complete? Just think about it. As of now, out of these three, which one are you using naturally out of ethos, pathos, and logos? And which one could you develop further to make your persuasion more complete? Just think about it and you can have your action plan accordingly, because most of us we are using logos as of now more. We are least bothered about pathos, because we think emotion is something which is not important when we are speaking or when we are presenting. However, emotion is really important. Why I say so? It is not about, as I said, being dramatic, but it is more about sharing the impact or sharing the opportunity which builds the emotional connect with the stakeholder. And that ways you can influence them. Then ethos also plays really important role. Only your degree, only your qualification will not matter. If you are sharing your relevant experience, for example, right? Your your vocal authority, the way you are presenting, all these makeups, this builds your credibility, this builds your trust. So, say for example, if logos comes very naturally to you, I would request you to work towards ethos and pathos. Right? We have shared many elements of ethos, pathos, and executive presence. And how can we frame our statement in such a way which will influence our stakeholders and it will be more actionable in nature. So I would request you to start working on those components which we are doing less often, right? So persuasion isn't about being louder, it is about being truer. It is about being true to yourself along with the components of ethos, pathos, and logos. So let's combine credibility, clarity, connection, and your message become persuasive, your message become irresistible and more compelling. Right? So this is something which we have learned from the case study. Now let me take you to the slide and just give me a moment. Give me a moment. So we are talking about public speaking. Uh, when we speak, this is very important. This message was very important. How can we influence? If we can speak, you can influence. And if we can influence, we can actually impact lives. We can change lives. So what is persuasion? We have seen this in great detail. The persuasion is actually the science of influence. And persuasion is a combination of ethos, pathos, and logos. If we blend all three, we can influence our stakeholders, we can influence our internal customers, external customers. Public speaking is what? It's actually the stage where this science of influence comes alive. So I've put this on the slide also, and this is really important. If we really want to change anyone's life, public speaking in general, I'm talking about. In that case, if you speak, you can influence, and if you can influence, you can definitely make an impact on others' lives, right? And with this, I will come to the almost to the conclusion, and then we will conclude, and then we can take questions from you. Just give me a moment. If you have any question, you can feel free to share. And see what I am trying to tell you. What all did we learn here? We learned about the executive presence. These are the key takeaways, which talks about the vocal authority. And the real measure of this session isn't what you heard. It is actually that what you can apply. We learned other things. We learned the components of persuasion. We talked about the very important part that explaining number is not enough. It is not a differentiator, right? Accuracy is something which is expected from all of us, but then what is adding value is the influence. What is the value multiplier is the art of persuasion, is the art of influencing our stakeholders, right? So the real measure of success of this session is asking yourself that where what comes naturally to me and where do I need to further improve. So any single thing which you can pick, and if you can start implementing it for your next client meeting, for your next stakeholders meeting, that would be something which will act as a career catalyst for you, right? So every, I've mentioned here, every persuasive conversation you lead is a step towards greater influence. So with this, I'm closing, and I look forward to the questions if you have any. Any questions, feel free to ask.
Ma'am, we are waiting for the questions to come up.
Sure,
So
sure,
just a minute or so, you please wait.
sure.
Ma'am, one question is posed.
Sure, please go
Uh,
ahead.
what role does speaker presence play in capturing audience attention within the first few minutes of a speech?
Sure. The role of speaker is very important, especially in the first few seconds. We also cover during our webcast, it talks about the first 10 seconds. The way you are presenting yourself, your vocal authority, right? Your controlled pace. And if it is a face to face presentation, how you're standing, your body posture, your vocal tone, this really matters a lot, especially when you're beginning a speech. Start with what's in it for me. People are not listening because you're talking. People are only listening because they are going to get benefit of your out of your speech. So it should be something which is very relevant to the audience. If you talk about that, which will help them to grow in their career, for example, which will help them to get out of any pain which they are going through, which will help them in any other way. In that moment, you will immediately grab the attention of your audience, right? But then, yes, what we mentioned is the executive presence during our webcast. That is really important, which is your intentional pauses, calm delivery, vocal authority, and what's in it for me. That is very important. I hope I was able to answer your question.
Yes, ma'am. And one more is there. What practical strategies can professional use to influence opinions and inspire action through ethical and authentic communication?
Sure. There are ways, and I will come back to the learnings from webcast itself. When we should not be only informative in our approach. It is when we are presenting a report to our stakeholders, it is not only about communicating something has happened. It is more about what is the impact, what kind of impact is this going to have. When I'm sharing this information, what is the impact it is going to have on the client? It could be a loss of opportunity, or it could be you're going to get an opportunity, or it could be some kind of risk. So when you are talking about impact, you are grabbing the attention of your stakeholder. And impact should be followed by your recommendation. Recommendation should be very clear and to the point, evidence based, so that ways you can influence the decisions of your stakeholder. Apply all the three components of persuasive speech, as I said, as I've mentioned in this webcast also, that is ethos, which is building your credibility, which will not come only through a qualification, but will definitely come through your relevant experience as well, your subject matter expertise, the logical evidence which comes through logos, and pathos, which means building connection. It is not only being dramatic or being emotion, but then yes, when you're talking about losses or opportunity, definitely you are building a connection with your stakeholders, right? So blending the components of persuasion, that is ethos, pathos, and logos, and adding impact to your presentation, adding your recommendation to your presentation, you can definitely influence your stakeholders to take actions, to take decisions. I hope I was able to answer.
Yes.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you. Any other question?
Ma'am, wait a second. Some questions are coming up.
Sure, sure, sure. I'm very happy to hear that questions are there, which means people are interested.
Ma'am, what techniques can a speaker use to transform nervous energy into confident and persuasive delivery?
Sure, sure. Thank you so much for asking this question. And this happens with the beginners, definitely. When you are preparing for the presentation, I would request you to do practice. A thorough practice is very important. And visualization, another technique is visualization. When I say visualization, uh, put yourself in a room or in front of the mirror, visualize that you are delivering a speech in a very confident manner, everybody is applauding, and you are able to deliver the way you had thought. So practice is the key. It's not only one, twice, thrice, practice and practice and practice. Another is, as I said, visualization is very important. When you are about to present a day before, maybe you can just think about, visualize that you're doing it in a wonderful way and everybody is appreciating, applauding the way you're delivering. So practice is the key thing. I can say that that's the only mantra for being more confident. Being, I mean, having the subject matter knowledge of what you're going to deliver. It should not be something that we have just picked it and started delivering, because the subject matter, start referring the materials on the topic on which you're going to speak. So all these things are very important. You can refer to the podcast, go to YouTube videos, refer to the materials, and prepare it. Preparation is the key, practice is the key, visualization is the third key, right?
Yes, ma'am, you are very correct on this topic because the topic of webcast today, no, that is presence to persuasion and the communication skills. The important part in any of the communication skills that we move is the practice. Because the more you practice, you come out of that fear. Your
Very
body
true.
language definitely changes once you again and again practice. So,
Yes.
all the people today, the participants who are on this webcast, please understand one thing: whatever the ma'am told in this whole session of our webcast was important to remember that effective public speaking is not about just a perfection, it is more about the connection.
Yes.
You need to connect with the people, whether it is a storytelling, whether it is your practical life hacks, anything, any
Yes.
contact that you are building up, that has to be visualized by the other person who is
Yes.
narrating a particular event.
Very true.
And this presence is grounded much in the authenticity and guided by the integrity will gain you a power. What
Yes.
ma'am said is you have to inspire trust and influence the change that is coming up. The
Yes.
more you practice, it will give you your voice a clarity, it will give your thoughts a clarity, a proper vision to bring what is more genuine rather than just bringing up the facts together and speaking out. So
Right. Very true.
whatever has ma'am has said in these three questions was the crux of the whole webcast, that the more you are working on these skills, you develop, you polish more. the raw
Yes.
material gets more polished, right, ma'am? So
Very true. Very true. Very well said.
this will really improve your confidence, your sincerity, and the clarity of the subject.
Yes, it will.
So, ma'am, these were the last questions that were posed, and now we are on the verge of closing up this session. So, I would like to first of all thank you, and it was such an honor to be having you as a part of this webcast. From presence to persuasion, public speaking skills that command attention and trust, organized by the Professional Enrichment Committee ICAI. On behalf of Professional Skills Enrichment Committee ICAI, would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our speaker Bhavna Kumari ji for her enlightening session. A wide round of applause and thanks to the organizers of this Professional Skills Enrichment Committee ICAI and our today's speaker Bhavna Kumari ji and all the stakeholders who had made this webcast a memorable one. I would like to extend my thanks to Dr. Shambit Kumar Mishra ji, his technical team, and everyone whose presence here has made this webcast a grand success. So, closing up this for today's session, see you tomorrow again in the next session. Thanking you all. Have a good day. Signing off. See you, Bhavi Thakkar, for today. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Bhaviji. Thank you, Dr. Samritji, and the entire team who was involved in organizing this webcast. It was truly an honor for me to connect with all of you and present my views on the session. I'm looking forward to such more sessions in the coming future. My heartfelt thanks, my heartfelt gratitude to all of you for paying attention and for taking out time for this webcast. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thanks.